Repair Clinic encourages you to perform this procedure safely. In this video, we will show one or more of these icons to alert you when to use caution. Before you replace the cylinder head gasket on your snowblower engine, make sure the engine has cooled and the ignition key has been removed. Now carefully tip the snowblower forward so it rests on the auger housing. Detach the choke lever extension. Next, use a 3/8" socket to unthread the 3 mounting screws, securing the lower shroud. Lift the lower shroud off. Now release the primer hose from the carburetor. Use locking pliers to crimp the fuel line. Then release the retaining clamp to detach the line from the carburetor. Next, use a 10mm socket to unthread the nuts, securing the air intake housing. Detach the primer hose from the retaining bracket. Detach the breather tube from the valve cover, then lift off the housing and set it aside. Slide off the carburetor inlet gasket. Detach the throttle spring and linkage from the carburetor. Slide the carburetor off of the mounting post and set it aside. Remove the outlet gasket. Detach the ignition wire from the insulator and slide off the insulator and gasket. Using a 1/2" wrench, unthread the 2 mounting nuts securing the muffler. Carefully remove the muffler. Remove the muffler gasket. Use the 10mm socket to unthread the bolts securing the air baffle. Detach the baffle. Detach the wire and boot from the spark plug. Use a 13/16" socket or a spark plug wrench to help unthread the spark plug. Use the 10mm socket to unthread the bolts securing the valve cover. Pry off the cover. This may require some effort. Rotate the engine until both rocker arms are loose. Now use a 14mm wrench to secure the rocker pivot bolts and a 10mm wrench to loosen the jam nuts securing the rocker arms. Rotate the arms out of the way and lift out the push rods. Using a 12mm socket, unthread the bolts securing the cylinder head. remove the head. You can now remove the old gasket if still intact. Before you install the new cylinder head gasket, clean off any residue. Make sure the alignment pins are in place, then align the new gasket. Reposition the cylinder head. Thread the mounting bolts. First torque the bolts to 9 foot-pounds. Then torque the bolts to 17 foot-pounds in an alternating diagonal pattern. The last bolt tightened should be the one closest to the exhaust port. Now insert the push rods. Make sure the cap is in place on the exhaust valve and position the rocker arms. The piston should be approximately a 1/4 inch past its top position, and both rocker arms should be loose. Confirm that the gaps between the rocker arms and the valves are at manufacturer's specifications. The intake valve gap should be between 4 and 6 thousandths of an inch. The exhaust valve gap should be between 6 and 8 thousandths of an inch. With the gaps set, tighten the jam nuts. Next, scrape off any sealant residue from the valve cover. Position the valve cover gasket, followed by the cover itself. Replace the bolts to secure the cover. Torque the bolts to 6 foot-pounds in an alternating pattern. Rethread the spark plug. Be careful not to damage the threads by over-tightening. Reattach the boot to the spark plug. Realign the air baffle and secure it with the bolts. Align the muffler gasket on the studs. Reposition the muffler and rethread the nuts to secure. Slide the insulator gasket onto the carburetor mounting posts. Now slide the insulator onto the posts and attach the ignition wire. Align the carburetor outlet gasket. Then slide on the carburetor. Reattach the throttle spring and linkage. Align the inlet gasket. Reposition the air intake housing and attach the breather tube to the valve cover. Secure the primer hose in the retaining bracket. Rethread the nuts to secure the housing and tighten. Reattach the fuel line to the carburetor and secure it with the retaining clamp. Remove the locking pliers and reattach the primer hose to the carburetor. Replace the lower shroud by first inserting the tabs into the slots in the frame. Position the shroud and rethread the mounting screws. Replace the choke lever extension with the support tabs facing up. Return the snowblower to its upright position. With the repair completed, reinsert the ignition key, and your snowblower should be ready for use.